Hi everyone, welcome to another tutorial. It feels so good to be here again. If this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. My name is Gina and this channel is all about fashion. In today's tutorial, you are going to be learning how to make this beautiful princess style dress with a keyhole neckline. I already made a tutorial on how to draft a princess style bustier, so if you did not know how to draft that, I will link the video up and it will also be in the description box, so do well to check it out. So without wasting much of your time, let's dive into the video. The first thing I went ahead to do was to draft the princess style bustier. If you don't know how to draft the princess style bustier, I have a tutorial up on my channel. I'll link it up and also the link will be in my description box. So after you've drafted the princess style bustier, the next thing we need to work on is the keyhole neckline. So for starters, I went ahead to do a basic neckline with a width of 3 inches and a depth of 3.5 inches. So to get the keyhole neckline, I came down by 1.5 inches from my neckline at the center front, and then at the princess that line, I came down by 2.5 inches. You see me measuring from my chest line because my keyhole, my actual basic neckline did not extend to that side, so and the distance between my chest line and my neckline is half inch, so I just took 2 inches down from my chest line. So I went ahead to use my curved rule to connect the center front to the princess that line. So from the new line I just drew, I came down by 1.5 inches and used my curved rule to connect it upwards. This can be as wide as you want. It just depends on your personal preference. If you want it wider, you can extend your curve towards the princess that line, but be very careful so it does not get too wide. I went ahead to readjust this depth again because I'm making this dress for a student and I'm not trying to get cancelled. So after I did this, I went ahead to erase it and then make the width more narrow. So the next thing in line is to cut out the pattern. So go ahead to cut yours just like you see me cutting mine. Also, I went ahead to label the patterns. The shoulder part was labeled A, the center piece was labeled B, and then the side piece was labeled C. So I went ahead to cut on my fabric. The pattern I drafted before already had allowance on the neckline, the armhole, the side seam. So all I added was on pattern A, I added seam allowance around the bottom and then the corner, which is the princess that line. Then on pattern B, I added allowance around the new neckline, the bustier area, and also the waistline. On pattern C, I added seam allowance of half inch too on the bust area and also the waistline. I also went ahead to cut the lining as well. So for the down part of this dress, I already drafted it and you should know how to do this if you watched my tutorial on how to draft the basic bodies. So basically I completed the pattern, and then the difference between the lining and the fabric is half inch because I made a mistake, so I just decided to make up with that. So that was just turn up allowance and the back as well. If you don't know how to draft a basic bodice, I will link it up and it will be in my description box. So here I'm just explaining that where I'm pointing at is my hip point. That is where my pattern stopped, and to get the measurement I used in drafting my knee side, I just divided my hip by 4 and then minus 1.5 inches. Don't forget to add your 1 inch for ease. In case you are wondering if I am going to cut the back half cut, no, I did not, because it is not compulsory. I just went ahead to draft my basic back bodice and then extended the pattern to meet my dress length. So at this point, you can go ahead to iron cloth stay on your upper bodice if you please. So the first sewing step is to get pattern A fabric and lining with the right sides facing each other. Then you're going to sew the neckline with half inch sewing allowance. Next, you will grab pattern B and you're going to open it up as usual and then place the lining and the fabric with the right sides facing each other and sew on this part you see me pointing at. After sewing both necklines, the next thing you're going to do is to notch the seam and go ahead to top stitch on the lining. So the next step is to place these two pieces together with the right sides facing each other and you're going to separate the lining from just the upper piece. Then go ahead to pin where you see me pinning and sew with 1/2 inch on both sides. So after sewing it, you're going to lay it flat like this, then turn it over, and then we're going to lift up this shoulder lining that we did not include before, then flip it over to the front just like this. Once you flip it over to the front, you are now going to roll up the down part of this bodice, and then we are now going to place the lining over it to try and cover up this neckline. So you place your lining on that edge and then pin it to secure it all the way to the end, and then sew with 1/2 inch. So after you've done that, you're then going to bring out the fabric that was tucked inside before like this. So this is what it should look like after you've done that, and you can see how neatly the seams have been closed. So now we're going to get pattern C, and it is time for us to attach pattern C to the main fabric. You're not going to add the lining right now. The first thing I have to do is to place pattern C on this already joined part with the right sides facing each other, and then from the armhole side we are going to sew with 1/2 inch allowance, making sure that it is well aligned. So you're also going to do the same thing on the other side as well. After stitching, you can go ahead to notch the seam allowance so it can be relaxed, and then you have to use your bust ham to iron the seam open. After ironing, you can now grab the lining for the side pieces and then place it just the way you see me placing it on the seam allowance. We're trying to turn the seam or close the rough edge of that seam, so we're going to just place the lining like this and then sew on it, alright, so that when we flip it over, the seam will be covered. So you're going to repeat the same step on the other side as well. Just place it like this on the seam and then sew along the seam allowance. So after closing the rough edges, this is what it should look like. You can see how neat it looks. So this is what your upper body should be looking like. So the next thing we'll go ahead to do is to grab the lower part of the dress. Then I went ahead to place the lining and the fabric with the right sides facing each other, and then I stitched the hemline. For the back of the dress, I already went ahead to turn the neckline with the lining and also top stitch the neckline on the lining as well. So after that, you are then going to turn the hemline of the lining and the fabric together before you sew the zipper allowance. Okay, so neckline, hemline before the zipper side, and all of these were sewn with 1/2 inch. All right. Like I said earlier, I made a mistake at the beginning when I was cutting the fabric, so I had to use only 1/2 inch for turn up allowance. Usually you would have to use 2 inches. So the next step is to attach the lower bodies of the front to the upper bodies of the front like this, but you're not going to add the lining yet. So we're going to use the lining to turn the seam allowance. So after joining the up and down without the lining, I marked the front of the lining just so you understand where we're going to be sewing on, right? So I marked there, and also the seam allowance on the waistline. So now we're trying to make these 2 points, these 2 markings to meet. So I just folded in the lining like this so that that marked part would meet the marked part on the waistline. Do you understand? So just like that, now we are going to turn in the lining so that we can sew on the waistline to the very end with the lining. All right, so we are trying to use the lining to turn the seam allowance on the waistline. So we're just going to pin it all the way around and then sew with 1/2 inch. So after sewing it, this is what it should look like. So I went ahead to turn it inside out, and voila, you can see that the waistline has been closed, the seam has been closed. So that is what we're trying to achieve. So now we're going to grab the back pattern and it's time to join the shoulders together. So firstly, we are going to be joining fabric to fabric and lining to lining, okay? So on the shoulder line, you're going to arrange it and make sure it is perfectly arranged, and then pin it to make sure it is fabric to fabric and lining to lining, and then you're going to stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. Do the same thing on both sides and I'll be back. After stitching the shoulder line, this is what it looks like. You can see how very neat it looks, so yours should look just like this. And make sure you arrange the fabric to fabric and lining to lining so that they're not overlapping each other. So this is what it looks like, and the next step is to attach the sleeves. If you don't know how to draft the basic sleeve yet, I have a detailed tutorial up on my channel and the link will be in the description box. So the next step is to attach the sleeves to the armhole. So I went ahead to notch the midpoint of my sleeve. Then I placed the midpoint on the shoulder line and stitched on both sides of the armhole. So then I used bias to close the seam allowance on the armhole so it to be neat, and then I sewed the zipper allowance from the hemline to about 3 inches above. I did not sew on that part at the zipper side, just so it will serve as a slit. So I went ahead to attach my zipper and then I joined this side and I was done with the dress. So guys, this is the end result of the dress. This student is so shy. I literally had to hype her up before she could even pose like this. It's so funny. She looks very cute nonetheless. Anyways, remember you can always make the keyhole neckline wider than this. I made it so because that is what she wanted. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. If you have any questions about the tutorial, drop them in the comment section below. I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.